Welcome to another episode of MFS US Connects, where we bring you interviews with service and program providers relevant to your OCAM posting. I'm your host for this episode, Kim Brown, and I'm the Military Family Service Coordinator in Whidbey Island, Washington. Today's guest is one of our SISIP OCAM representatives and financial counselors, Martin Collette. Martin is going to be sharing with us the resources, services, and supports that SISIP is able to offer our members and their families, even while they're OCAN and not within Canada. Martin, thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the role that you play within SISIP?
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. So I'm actually very new to SISIP, just started back in November of 2020. I come from a nonprofit credit counseling organization prior to this, where I spent the last 7 years. And then I spent the last about 17 years prior to that working in the banking industry. So that's the knowledge that I was able to bring to SISIP. So I'm a financial counselor with SISIP, helping people with, budgeting, debt, and all those aspects of their personal finance. I am a full-time virtual counselor, and OutCan is the world that I live in. So I am here and accessible for everyone at any time through virtual. Again, the power of technology gives us this opportunity. We can do over the phone, we can do over Teams, over Zoom. So it's really, I'm right there with you guys.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. And isn't it great that we can do this virtually? And I guess the beauty of that in all of this global pandemic is that we can be unmasked. So how great is it to be able to see each other's faces and not behind a mask? But truly, it's wonderful that you're available to our families and that you're able to connect with them virtually, even when they can't be in your office.
There's definitely a bonus there of no mask, as you mentioned. It makes it a little bit easier. And thanks to technology, it's always nice to put a face to the people you're talking to, to just really get to be able to convey the information along the way. So again, it's not mandatory to do anything by video, but it's definitely a nice option to have. We can also work over the phone as well when people are more comfortable. So we're here to meet the people's need and however comfortable they are as far as having our conversations.
Absolutely. So just before we get into sort of some specific questions, I just want to touch on that level of comfort sort of thing. I know you and I, when we were preparing for this, had a discussion a little bit about how talking about money oftentimes can be a very uncomfortable kind of a subject for people. Feels very personal. Maybe if it's people that are discussing maybe issues that they're having with money, with budgeting, can feel kind of uncomfortable in a way that almost fills them with a little bit of a sense of dread kind of thing. So can you just maybe speak to a little bit about kind of how you feel like you can make people feel a little bit more comfortable about coming to you to talk about their financial issues?
Absolutely. And you're correct. I mean, when it comes to personal finance, it's a subject that most people just don't like to talk about. There's often a sense of embarrassment, a sense of pride, and it's understandable. But we offer our service. It's completely confidential, first of all. It's between me and the member and their spouse and family, depending on whoever they want to bring in. As far as anything we discuss, anything we look at and solution-wise. So it is a confidential conversation. The only time where it's, I'll say, not fully confidential is there are occasions where chain of command basically tells you have to come and see me, which is never a position you want to be in. At which point we do report back to them because it's an official referral, but we're not telling them exactly what we're talking about. We're confirming that, yes, we're meeting, yes, we're having conversations, and yes, we're working together, but we're not going to give them your financial information either. So even in that scenario, there's still confidentiality of information. So, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help. And every scenario is different. What works for one member might not work for another. So there's no just general answer of here's what we can do. I mean, I can tell you we have all kinds of programs available, absolutely, that we can look at through support our troops and loan programs and grant programs. But our job here at SISIP is making sure that whatever solution we look at is the right one for that member. So we offer individual service. It's just a one-on-one conversation to find what the need is for that member. So there's no global answer, basically. It really is an individual decision-making process. And again, it's up to the member to make sure, here's what I'm offering. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. I'm here to give information, suggestions, and opinions, and then the member needs to be on board with it. So if I offer a solution that doesn't work for them, they can tell me that. Okay, well, what else is available? What else can we look at? So we're not here to dictate anything. We're here to help.
Perfect, perfect. And you just touched on one of the questions that I was prepared to kind of ask you on behalf of the listeners, which was, if a member or a family goes to SISIP for, say, financial counseling, does that go on any kind of a service record, or would the chain of command be made aware? And so you've answered that. And basically what you've said is that if it's something that the chain of command has identified as a necessity, that you might be required to report back to the chain of command that yes, there has been a contact made, but specifics of what has been discussed would not be something that you would be divulging to the chain of command, say.
Exactly.
Perfect, perfect. That's good to know. That's good to know, because as we talked about, finances can feel very, very private, very, very personal. And so, it would be important for our listeners to know that that information would be kept private. So
yes, and it is available, as you mentioned, not just to members, but spouses as well. Again,
yes.
that service is available to everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I guess to build on that then, so a spouse is able to reach out to you for financial aid, or not so much aid, I guess, but for financial counseling or financial advice independent of the CAF member, is that correct?
Absolutely. They can contact us. There's various ways to do so. Our website has, all the information there as well. They can call us, basically, as long as they tell us who the member is, so we can kind of link it back. Absolutely. We can work with simply a spouse or a family member, adult children and such. Absolutely.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So we'll get into some of the other questions that kind of came up that I'll throw out to you, and you can let us know what what you can offer on the SISIP side of things. So one of the first questions would be, and it's very broad. So basically, how can SISIP help our members and their families set up a household budget? Are there any tips or tricks or anything like that you would be able to give us kind of right off the bat in regards to that?
Absolutely. And when we look at personal finance, everything starts with the budget. So we do have tools that can help people as far as budgeting and such, where you can help people create that budget if they're unsure. When it comes to budgeting, it's really the most important piece, but there's also a big misunderstanding of what a budget really is. So a lot of people think creating a budget is putting numbers of here what I spend per month per category, and there we go, we have a budget. That really is the least important part of a budget. The most important part of a budget is the tracking. What is reality? Because our perception and reality does not always match. We're all very, very good at knowing our big expenses, but it's often the little things we don't realize how much we spend going out, restaurants, coffees, those types of things.
Okay.
And those are the areas that we can help bring some knowledge. We know, the average individual, depending on where they reside, what the average cost would be and things like that, to help create a realistic budget. So we bring kind of global information and averages where I can have an individual tell me I spend $150 a month on groceries. Doesn't matter where you live, that's rather unrealistic unless your restaurant budget is around $600 a month. So we try to bring those realistic numbers based on averages to make sure that people create that realistic budget. Then we have the tool and, again, information to help them. Okay, now we need to find out reality. Mm-hmm. So that's where the tracking comes into play. And again, we can help them with that, and we can help them review. And again, the tips and tricks and areas sometimes that we can see that, okay, you're paying a lot in car insurance. When's the last time you've shopped that around? Because based on, again, averages, maybe you can find a better deal somewhere. And tips and tricks of the sort, things like internet TV service. Again, a lot of people are used to the big providers, but depending on where you are, there's often alternative that are a lot cheaper. So we might be able to
Okay.
guide people. Have you looked into this? So there's definitely a variety of items that we can help as we create that budget and share those tools to help them. And everything about finance really starts with a budget. So, I work on the personal finance side, financial counseling. But if you don't have a good budget, it's hard to talk to someone in our insurance side to identify those needs, because then we need to know what's available to pay for that insurance. And it's hard to start doing financial planning, savings, TFSAs, and those types of things when, again, we don't have a good budget to know what's truly available when it comes to making those investments.
Right. Okay, okay. So really, setting up a budget involves, like you said, so much more than just kind of identifying, okay, this is how much came in last month, this is how much went out last month, kind of thing. And it sounds like you can really help our members and our families even by looking sort of outside the box into things like, we can give you suggestions on maybe shopping around for, lower car insurance or differences in what you're paying out on, say, your internet or your cable or things like that. So maybe there is kind of extra advice that you can give our families that maybe they don't assume that would be a part of your role.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we look at that really global picture of everything to seek opportunity, in areas that sometimes we don't think about ourselves.
Sure.
And as we get into this budgeting habit of tracking expenses, it often actually helps us see those types of things to go, is this where I want my money to go? Do I want to do something different because now there's something more important to me where I would like my money to go? And that's really what we do. It's about education, of helping people see those things so they can then make what I like to call an educated decision on reality versus perception.
Right.
Because our perception is, unfortunately, like I said, and I'll say it often, not always matching with reality.
Right. I love that. I love how you can help our members and our families with that outside the box stuff that maybe, they're not considering as a part of their day-to-day, financial obligations, I guess. So I like that. I like that. So that's awesome. So I guess on the other side of things, I would ask, what can SISIP help if we have a member or a family that's experiencing financial difficulty? We talk about, how uncomfortable it is to talk about sometimes, our budgeting and our finances. We've talked about you helping our families, being able to help our families set up a household budget. What happens if there's already been kind of some trouble in the financial department? What happens if we have a member or families that are having a hard time meeting their financial obligations, paying their bills, feeling really overwhelmed with maybe some bad decisions they've made and some debt they're now carrying? Is SISIP able to help with that?
Absolutely. So when it comes to our process of what we look at, so we always start with creating that budget to create a financial picture of the individual, of where things at. And one of the downside of COVID for a lot of people is some people reduce work, reduce pay for some. If we have credit, again, natural instinct to compensate with it. And some people get themselves a little bit over their head. So again, we're not here to judge anyone. Absolutely understand human nature. It's one of those things we think, well, the credit's there, I compensate, and that's okay. I'll pay it back later and I'll make it work. But there's times where it just doesn't work anymore. So again, very non-judgmental here. We're here to figure out ways to help. So as far as process, we kind of look, I'll say in order more or less. We always say, can the member actually make this work themselves with a little bit of guidance? All right. And usually by the time they call us, that's not an option, but that's the best case scenario. So from there, we'll look at other options. So again, through Support Our Troops, we have various loan programs available. So we have distress loans, which is up to $25,000 at a very reasonable interest rate that we can spread over 5 years. We can often help reduce payments, give a chance for people to consolidate loans and things like that. We have what's called a small preventative loan, which is a smaller amount available, Again, different interest rate, that one's up to 36 months, which again might be enough to help. We have grants available as well for certain emergency situations. So depending on if the member qualifies, where here's a grant to help with the need, to get them back on track on where they need to be. So again, looking at all those options really depends on the picture we create together when creating that budget, looking at income and expenses, looking at the debt load. And beyond that, there's unfortunate circumstances where none of those options work. The loan's not going to fix anything, just talking with them is not going to fix anything. So from there, we start looking at what else is available. So there are absolutely, organizations out there, nonprofit credit counseling organization that have options that we don't have. But we know about these options, we know how they work. So if that's a better option, we can direct the member that way to say, here's an organization that can help you, here's what you should expect. Now, again, it's not about just sending them there and saying, okay, well, now you're on your own. Absolutely not. We'll guide them through the process. We'll make sure that the information they're getting is good. So we stay in contact with them. Did you meet with them? What happened? The same way that sometimes that doesn't work. So then we need to look at, consumer proposal, which is a legal process to reduce debt. And the worst case scenario, and always the last one we look at, but sometimes is an option, is the bankruptcy option. Because again, life happens, is what I like to say. No one ever plans for bankruptcy, but there are times that it's the only way to get out of a circle that we're in. But again, we're able to explain how it works, what's the impact, how do you fix things afterwards. So again, all that information is available. So if someone makes that decision to go with any of those options, we can actually explain it to them and let them know how it works.
Great. I love that. So I love to hear that there are those options that are available through SISIP, but if our families have to go that one step further, that SISIP is there to sort of continue to guide them through that process, and kind of support them along the way in making sure that they get the best solution for their particular situation. So
Exactly.
I like that. Sometimes it's that support through the process that is just as important as being able to offer the service. So just having that someone to walk through with.
And some of these options, a lot of people don't know anything about, and all that we know is what we've heard and what we think. So things like consumer proposal and bankruptcy, a lot of people think it's the end of the world, which it really isn't. And sometimes it is the best solution, but it's just getting that understanding of what does it mean for them. And since I'm a certified bankruptcy counselor, I can exactly tell them what it means for them to explain to them the process. So from the best case scenario to the worst case scenario, we're here to guide the member. So if not something that we can do ourselves directly, again, we're not just going to send them out. We're going to stay with them along that process to make sure that things run smoothly.
I love that. And that's important for our families to know. So, okay, on to our next question then. Let's talk about members and families planning for their future. Can SISIP help guide people for that? And whether you're talking about, a single member maybe who's looking once they return to Canada from OCAN in purchasing their first home, whether it's maybe a newly married couple that are thinking about starting a family and they want to start maybe putting some money away for kids' education already, or whether it's people that are a bit later in their lives that are starting to look towards retirement and wanting to make sure they have enough put away for retirement savings outside of pension. Can SISIP help kind of guide people along with those kinds of things?
Absolutely. So again, I'm going to start with a really good budget, because we need to know our finance. And for every one of those scenarios, single individual, maybe younger to retirement, that's where our financial planners come into play. And the nice thing about financial planners through SISIP is they are there for the members. So when we go to financial planners, either individuals or with our own bank, they are good. I'm not going to say that they're not, but they work for an organization where there's there's a goal, and the goal is to bring in investment to make money for the organization and so on.
Sure.
Versus SISIP, the only goal is to serve the member. So there's no, we're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to find the right products for you based on your life goals. So all our financial planners are certified, and it's finding the right investments, for each individual based on where they are in their lives and what their life goals are.
Mhm.
So to figure out, if, is it a small RSP to start, young individual, the earlier we start, we all know the best it is, because that RSP will grow over time. Or now there's kids into play. All right, thinking about their education. How about starting a small RESP as far as saving for post-secondary education? And that's what our financial planners do. That's their role, to try to find the right place for those investments that will make people feel, comfortable with them. There's an old
Sure.
saying that says, if your investments are stressing you out, then they're not the right investments for you, because investments should make you feel good. And everyone's different when it comes to investment. So it's what they do as far as figuring out, what is the right investment for this member based on their goal, their life goal, their current situation in life.
Mhm.
And it's very, very similar for our insurance folks. So again, our insurance people, again, are not here to oversell on insurance. Someone might say, oh, I want $1 million worth of insurance. And the question is, why? Why do you need that much?
Right.
Where are you in your life? What is the single individual, you're renting, you don't own a home. Why do you need $1 million? Why pay for that when you don't need that? So again, it's guiding individuals of kind of help them understand what their need is versus the want. Because
Mhm.
sometimes our want doesn't necessarily match our need. So they can, again, help guide people through some of those processes to make sure that they get what they need and adjust along the way when that needed change. Versus your average company, they'll sell you whatever you want. So
Right.
again, it's making sure that you're getting the right product for your personal needs.
Right. Okay. And that was you kind of, it kind of bled over a little bit into my next question, which is great. This is awesome. I mean, I love this kind of flow, which was, does SISIP offer, life insurance type plans kind of thing? And can our members and our families look into life insurance? I know from my perspective, that, when my husband and I were younger, we didn't really think a whole lot about life insurance. I mean, sometimes when you're a little younger, you're kind of in that whole, I'm good, nothing gonna happen to me for a while. And maybe you don't have kids yet. Maybe you do have kids, but you're still just in that whole, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm all's good in the world kind of thing. So, what does SISIP offer in the way of life insurance? And do you have any kind of wisdom sort of thing to impart to people about life insurance? I mean, I know maybe that might be a bit of a separate kind of thing, but is it too early or too late to do life insurance? What's the take there?
It's never too early, that's for sure. And again, it depends on, personal situation. And they're often the things that we forget about, so, we have, let's say we start off with a small life insurance, when we're young, just to have in case something happens. But time goes by, now all of a sudden we're married and we don't think about that, but maybe we should get a little bit more in case something happens. And then all of a sudden we have children. And again, we don't necessarily think of it till we go, oh yeah, we should do this.
Mm.
So again, that's the great thing about, our SISIP counselors and such, is you can call them, set up an appointment, discuss, and just see what's out there. What do you think, I should get? And again, we do keep track of the information. So, okay, I'm talking to a member today. Things are good. We're expecting in like 8 months from now, we're doing budget. Great. So in 8 months from now, what you're telling me is there might need to review your insurance because there's a big change in life all of a sudden. Yes.
Mm.
Okay. Would you like me to refer you to one of our insurance or one of our investment counselors, to talk about that? Okay, we'll do that. And, after the newborn is here, okay, so we'll set it up for you. So we're all independent, but we do all work together. We are one team. We're just kind of divided in our 3 sectors, but we all are all one team. So again, by talking to any of us, you really get access to all three services at the same time. Because I do not do insurance or financial planning, but I can see the need and then talk
Mhm.
to the member about it to say, have you thought about this? No? Okay. Would you like me to connect you with someone?
Right.
So the same way that when they talk to a financial planner and they say, well, things are looking a little funny on the budget side of things, would you like to talk to a financial counselor?
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter which area you talk to, in the end, you're really talking to all three sections because we'll let you know. So
Sure.
it's just about having that first contact with any of our group, and then from there, you'll get access and contact to all of us.
Okay. Okay. So do you have, is there sort of a standard recommendation for how often we should update our financial stuff, our financial portfolio, should it just be centered around to important events in our lives, when we get married, when we have our first child, or is there kind of a bit of a timeline? Should we do a review? Look, we go in and we have our annual physicals, or our, every 2-year physicals, or whatever it is. Should we be doing that maybe for our financial health?
Well, when we look at our financial health, if we look at budgeting and that piece of the personal finance, that's ongoing. That's every day. That's not something that really should stop. Once we start that, it's something that can help us throughout our entire life, and it's just a good habit to get into. And
Sure.
like I said, there's tools for us to help. When it comes to things like financial planning and insurances, a lot of times these things are tied to big events. But when we talk about big events, it's a little bit relative. So every time we move, so if you move to a different city, to a different country, well,
Mm.
things change. The need might change. Maybe you need different coverage. Maybe you need less. Maybe you need more. What's the new cost of living? So again, when we change cities, things cost a little bit more, a little bit less. So that's where that budgeting piece, takes a little bit of time to readjust.
Right.
So we often think of the big life events, but really something as simple as moving is a life event. So is there a different need? You were renting, you had, a healthy life insurance in case something happens, but now you bought a home. Okay, maybe we need to upgrade that life insurance so if something happens, the house is paid off and you don't have to worry about the family. And do you want a
Right.
little extra at that point for that reason? So anytime there's some sort of change, then it's not a bad idea to review.
Hmm.
Even a posting somewhere or whatever, have a call. Hey, I'm doing this. Any suggestions? Anything I should look at? And again, that's what we're here for, to say, yeah, well, what you have, covers you and you're okay. Or, well, maybe we should look at changing things up a little bit.
And that makes so much sense to me now as I'm listening to you say it, especially for our members and our families out can. We're all Canadians who came to the United States from Canada. And so I would venture to say that a lot of us, me included, didn't think about talking to somebody at SISIP before I made this leap to another country, to see if what I have in place maybe is enough based on what I'm looking at, here in the United States. I can tell you one of the things, and I guess maybe one of the things that I would ask you too, for on behalf kind of our listeners, is, a lot of us, when we do move out, we go from kind of living our financial lives in Canadian dollars, and we all of a sudden are transitioned into living our lives into US dollars, which of course means a big difference in the exchange rate, means a lot in our disposable income as we're living in the US, but still trying to maintain maybe some of our banking and investments back in Canada.
Mhm.
Um, what about, is SISIP able to give sort of some, maybe some information about how we can kind of reconcile that?
Yeah, we absolutely can help, with some guidance when it comes to some of those things. And those are the type of changes that are often difficult. You mentioned things like, interest rate or exchange rate,
Yeah.
and that changes on a weekly basis or daily basis, really.
Mm.
So that can be a little tricky. So it's trying to figure out, what numbers should I use on average, to do our planning. So absolutely information we can help with. Anytime there's a big change in life situation, be it a move, changing countries or anything like that, when it comes to your budgeting, to figuring these things out, realistically, it normally takes about 3 months to start to get a good idea. Every month has, additional expenses, and every month varies a little bit for certain things. Once you've got 3 months, now you start to get a decent average, and the more you do it, the better that information gets. So
Sure.
it's always difficult because there's no quick way. So sometimes we've got to work with, averages to ballpark the initial budget, but then that's where our tracking is going to help us see what reality really says. So
Sure.
there is always a transition period. And that's the period where we need to be a little bit more careful, usually just in case,
Mhm.
before we start going with the additional expenses. So, but absolutely, those are areas that we can assist with.
Great, great. I guess the one other sort of bit of a question that came in, and it came in sort of a little bit later than when you and I had talked before, and maybe there's no easy answer for this, but is there a difference in our living our financial lives? Is there a big difference between healthy credit debt and unhealthy credit debt?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, credit is part of this world. Nowadays, you pretty much cannot live without credit. Uh, I have absolutely nothing against credit. It can be a very useful tool, but it can also be a very dangerous tool.
Mhm.
So credit can give us that opportunity to overspend, and then we can't pay it in full. So you have credit, you use it, you pay it in full when the bill comes in. That doesn't cost you anything. A
Sure.
lot of people nowadays have points and so on. So that's actually gaining you something.
Mhm.
But that one's tricky because people, they carry a balance on a credit card, for example, and they say, well, I get points. Yes, but now if you're carrying a balance, you're paying for those points. This isn't
Mhm.
free anymore. So again, it's that understanding, because banks certainly will make it sound like, hey, you're getting all this free stuff. Well, not at 19.99% interest rate. It's not free.
Right, right.
Right. So
Yeah.
managing our debt properly, again, goes back to having that budget, of
Mm.
knowing what we can and can't spend. So when our budget is really tight and we have, let's say, $100 or $200 surplus on every average month, we got to think that, $200 a month is not a lot of money. That can disappear very, very quickly.
Sure.
So if we use credit to compensate or put, extra purchases on credit, now the ability to pay back is difficult. And
Mhm.
at the high interest rate, it gets very expensive very quickly.
Right.
It happens,
Mm.
for various reasons in life, it can happen. But again, if you have a good budget, now you know exactly how you're going to pay that back. All right, I have an extra $200 a month. You can't say I'm going to pay them $200 a month because things happen every day along the way. Well, you might say I can do 100, maybe 150. That seems safe and regular. So now you can calculate your purchase. How quickly can you pay it
Mhm.
back? And how much it's going to cost you. Again, the beauty of Google, you can find just about everything you need nowadays.
Mhm.
So you're going to make a large purchase, put it on a credit card. My suggestion is always, all right, Google up credit card payoff calculator.
Ah.
Dozens of them will come up. You put in, here's my purchase, here's my interest rate on my credit card. I'm planning to do $150 a month. And then you click submit, and it'll tell you how long is it going to take for you to pay it, how much interest you're going to pay for it, and so on. So now that information is very powerful, because now you might say, oh, it's going to cost me like $2,000 in interest to pay it off over the next 2 years. Maybe I want to do things different. Am I going to look at a different source of funding? Am I going to look at my budget and say, well, there's certain things here I don't really need. So if I don't spend there, I can put more money on this purchase and pay it back quicker and save me more. And that I'm more comfortable with. So it's all about information. And unfortunately, we're really good at buying first and calculating second.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So now we need to get in the habit of calculating first and then making the purchase. All
Right.
right. So,
Right.
and again, that's information we can come up with. What does that look like?
Sure.
And little things. Now, this might not impact in Outcan as much, but a lot of times people have own a home, have a ton of equity in it, and carry a lot of debt. Excuse me. So there's sometimes opportunity to use your own home equity to clear your debt, save yourself a ton of money in interest. And a lot of times people think, well, I'm going to pay penalties to redo my mortgage and so on. Yes, absolutely. But if you calculate that penalty over the interest cost, that penalty is nothing, right? So
Right.
again, it's the things we don't think about, or the information we have, we're scared of doing certain things because of, I'll call, misinformation. And
Mhm.
again, that's where we can help to say, well, it's really not that bad. You
Right.
know, here's the
Yeah.
numbers. Here's what they look like. You're going to pay $5,000 penalty for breaking your mortgage early, but you're about to save yourself $12,000 in interest.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And again, that comes back to the tips and tricks. I mean, that you folks at SISIP can kind of pass along to those of us that, like you said, whether it's through misinformation or whether it's just, we listen, it's like a lot of things in life, right? We hear the stories from other people about, oh gosh, don't ever do that because that's going to cost you this, and this, or don't ever do that because then you're going to have that on your record for this many years, or whatever it may be.
Yep.
We hear those horror stories and all of a sudden we go, oh no, I'm never going to be doing that. So we don't even consider it anymore, but we've never really gotten the full story, right? We've just heard maybe the bad things about it. So being able to come to you folks at SISIP as partners and say, look, what are my options here? How great is it that we can come and see you guys? You can give us that kind of information and we can know that you're not trying to sell us something, right?
Exactly.
Because you're trying to make money for the big banks or something like that. I mean, that is just, to me, is certainly, I think it's hugely meaningful and impactful. And I think it's wonderful for our families to know that this service is available to us. I think it's awesome.
The only thing I'm trying to sell as a financial counselor is knowledge.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And we have a lot of, I guess another one of my questions would be now too, because we have families, families out can, house buying out can is not necessarily an issue. But we do have families that when they're getting ready to transition from the US back to Canada, they're looking at buying homes back in Canada again. Maybe they've already left a home and they've been homeowners before. Maybe they've not been homeowners and this is first time home buying. And in the time of COVID, a lot of our families are doing things virtually. They're interacting with the real estate agents kind of virtually. They're doing virtual tours of their prospective homes. And we all know how the real estate market is right now. It's crazy hot. And so trying to find a house for a reasonable amount of money these days is it's a real big deal. So, what about SISIP assisting in those kinds of ways? If we have families that are returning to Canada looking at buying a home, can you folks help partner with our families in trying to figure that out and in their budget?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can definitely help on the financial side of looking, okay, here's what the picture looks like today. We know what's happening. And then we kind of create that futuristic look of, okay, well, now when you come back, what's the impact to income? What area are you looking to live? Okay, so you're looking to buy. So we kind of leave that blank. Here's the average cost of living for an individual in those areas. What kind of services you're looking at. What do you have today? So now we can identify, here's what's left. So now if you're going to be house shopping, okay, well, do you have savings? Do you have a down already planned? Yes. Okay. What range are you looking at? So we can make sure that that budget is going to work for what they are looking at.
Okay.
Because banks are very generous. Absolutely. Especially when it comes to mortgage, they're willing to sometimes lend us crazy amounts of money. And yes, the numbers work, but now, we're what you would call mortgage poor, right? That's it. You pay your mortgage, your basic necessities, but there's nothing left. So, and those are the scenarios we want to avoid. Now, nice thing is a home can always be sold, but an area where a lot of people get themselves into trouble, and I've seen this my entire career in financial counseling, is purchasing a vehicle. So purchasing a vehicle and financing a vehicle primarily is an area that a lot of people get themselves into trouble with. And the problem when you finance a vehicle too is as soon as you drove that vehicle off the lot, now you owe more than what it's worth. So you cannot get rid of a finance vehicle. because you'll never be able to sell it for what you owe. And unless you have the financial capability to pay off the difference, no one's going to buy that car because there's a lien on it.
Right.
So that is an area that a lot of people get themselves into trouble.
Mm.
Because you usually trace it back on their budget and debt load within 6 to 8 months after purchasing a vehicle. The finances just are not working anymore.
Yeah.
So that's an area that we can absolutely help. You're looking to finance a large purchase. Let's make sure it makes sense. Let's make sure it works with the budget, so you don't put yourself in a situation that really limits your options at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-purchase consultation, again, kind of falls into the budget consultation of just really looking the same way that, hey, promotion just came in, income just came up. Well, if your budget was good prior, what does that mean for you? What does it look like? So again, do you have certain goals you're working towards? Now you need to talk to a financial planner so we can start putting money aside, because your goal is to buy a house now in 2 years because you've got that next promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So again, those are the type of things that we absolutely can help with.
Awesome. Awesome. So that pre-purchase, I like that pre-purchase consultation. So even, even getting in touch with you at SISIP and saying, look, I mean, whether it's a house or whether, like you said, it's a vehicle. Look, my vehicle I have now is, 22 years old, and I'm sure it's on its last legs. I'm tired of big repair bills or whatever it is. I think I would like to finally invest in a brand new vehicle. So you guys can work with somebody and say, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, before you make the purchase, let's look at what's the best option here, and does this work within your budget?
Exactly. From that, the basic education, thinking of maybe younger members who just, maybe they don't have credit. How does it work? How do I build credit? I can help with that. I can explain, here's the best way to build credit. Or I've had bad credit, I'm trying to fix it. How do I fix it? Again, I can give information on the best ways to do it. Because again, a lot of misinformation out there. If you say, I'm trying to fix my credit, and you go to the bank and you say that, not a problem, you should get a loan. Yeah, but a loan's going to cost you money now. And a loan actually doesn't fix credit that quickly. So there's better methods to fix your credit than getting a loan. And there's methods that won't cost you anything. And that's where, again, we can bring that information on how to build it, how to fix it, how to, maybe financial issues, and you've got some things in collections. Well, okay, can we fix that? How to deal with those creditors? Are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? Because we all know that collection companies say a lot of things that aren't true. But it's being able to decipher some of that information, because they often kind of go for the fear factor. So again, all things that we can assist with as far as guiding members on what you can do, what they can't do, and things like that.
Okay. I have one kind of personal tied question that I want to ask, and I don't know, I mean, maybe some of our listeners will have this question. I'm a married lady. I've been married for over 30 years. Most of my credit has been tied to my husband's credit. We bought a home, both of our names, were on the mortgage, and we've had vehicles. Typically, both of our names have been on the vehicles. Is it important for couples? Because some of us, have been associated with our spouses for a very, very long time. Is it important for spouses to have their own credit? Is that
the answer is yes. So, the credit world is a funny one, because the rules are not standard. And so what I mean by that, for example, someone gets a loan. That loan will be reported on their credit file. That is guaranteed. Someone is a co-signer on that loan to help support it. That may or may not be reported. Depends on the institution. Some report co-signers, some don't. So as a co-signer, you might not have any credit showing anywhere, because whoever you're dealing with doesn't report co-signer. And a co-signer is not a primary credit holder. So being a co-signer is a bit of a catch-22, because you're liable for it, but it doesn't necessarily build you credit, because you're only important if the primary doesn't pay. Right. So you're liable, but you're not getting the benefit.
Right.
So it's good to have some credit under your own name to build your own credit. And this is something we've seen, definitely in the past, especially looking at, older generation. And it's certainly gotten a lot better over time. But yes, it's a good idea to have your own credit. And you don't need a lot of it. You just need something.
Yeah,
Normally, a credit card is the tool that builds credit the quickest and the best,
sure.
but it's also the most dangerous tool. So
Mm,
it's, again, a bit of that catch-22. But if you are joint with someone on a credit card, it may not give you any credit. So you
okay.
got to have it in your
Yeah.
own name to make sure that you're building your own credit.
And I will tell you from my personal story, I've just found out now that, and for anybody who's listening, maybe they're not aware of this. I was never aware of this. I apparently don't have any credit because everything that I have ever done has always been joint with my husband, secondary credit card holder, secondary signer on mortgages and loans and vehicle purchases and things like that. Apparently, I don't have my own credit at 53 years old. Who'd have thought? And
So
this is all new news.
in other words, you're liable for a lot of things, but no benefit.
A lot of things, but nobody has any track of the fact that the good things that I've done, like paid off mortgages and all those things like that. So, I mean, yeah, so important, who knew? I had no idea. Yeah, so
For many,
important.
for many, many years, banks would not report mortgages. So people that had a mortgage thinking they were building credit with that mortgage, they actually weren't building anything, because bank didn't like to post mortgages because they didn't want other banks to try and steal them, because then
Oh,
they'd see the information. Now that's changed quite a fair bit. Most mortgage companies now do report to credit bureaus, but there are the ones that don't, the same way that, so like say, certain banks, again, in Canada, we have only two credit bureaus. So Equifax Canada and TransUnion. Versus in the US, they have three active ones, but there's a fourth one as well. But here we only have the two. And even then, financial institutions are not required to report to both.
right.
Some report to one or the other, or to both, or to none.
Ah,
So again, that's where sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, because
sure.
you might look at one credit file, see, all these things. You look at the other and you don't see these things.
Mm, interesting.
So again, getting access to your own credit file is important. You should know what's showing up on your credit file to make sure that it's accurate. And again, that's things we can help with. There's various ways to get access to your credit file that we can assist members with on how to do it, the best way to do it. There's a lot of places that offers access to your credit file and credit file protection, and there's a fee for it. There's no need to pay for your credit file. There's different
Okay.
ways where you can get it for free. And again, that's something that we can help with on how to do that, to get credit information for yourself. Because mixed files happens. Things show up that shouldn't be there, or it's
Sure.
not yours. Very common with seniors and juniors, where people share the same name. So things get mixed up sometimes. I've seen scenarios with twins where, again, information's mixed up, because
Okay.
the names are different, but date of births are exactly the same, and so on. So mistakes absolutely happen. So when we know the information that's showing up under our name, then we can get corrections done. And
Mm,
again, areas that we can assist with. Here's how we do a correction on your credit file.
okay. I like that. I like that because again, I'm not sure that, a lot maybe of our members and families know that, you should know what's on your credit, file, what kind of credit history you have, before you go to make a purchase at a bank and you find out that there's something, there that isn't good, or, that you weren't aware of, or something like that. Good to know that if we're not really sure how to access that, that's absolutely something else that, you folks at SISIP can help walk us through. This is how we can find that, all really great information. I have to say, we, my husband and I have dealings with SISIP. We've done some things through SISIP, but a lot of things that I found out today that, are going to be very helpful to us moving forward. So yeah, I appreciate this. This is awesome. This has been some really great information. I don't have any more questions or anything like that. I don't know. Is there anything else that you kind of would like to put out there for people to know before we kind of, sew this thing up, or?
Again, I would say that simply that, we're here for the members. That's what we're here for. If it's just a simple question, give us a call. We'll answer the question. Doesn't matter what it's about, personal finance, insurance, financial planning. If you're unsure, I had a member recently get in contact with us because they are moving to Outcan in the very near future. And, they had questions about, well, what about my car and can I bring it? And what about my insurance? So again,
Right.
just able to assist with those kinds of questions of, because sometimes we just don't know and we don't know who to ask. And you give us a call and we can't answer the questions, we'll find out who can answer that question. Again, we're here to assist. So, and again, completely confidential. I always encourage, unfortunately, most people for, my piece of the business on the personal finance, people call me when it's, they probably should have called me 6-7 months ago. So don't wait. Give us that call early. If you call us when everything is good, we can help you keep it that way. And yes, when things are bad, hopefully we can help fix that situation as well. But we do a lot of personal finance education where you just want to learn to budget better. I've had a situation very similar where, well, we have a budget, but it never works. All right, so that already tells me that they're missing parts of the
Right.
full budget circle. We can work with you on that. You don't need a loan. You don't need anything like that. You just need a little bit of guidance,
Yeah.
and I'm more than happy to do that. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Knowing that we can tell our members and our families, be proactive with your finances, and I like that, get in with SISIP when things are good versus waiting until things are bad. I like that. That's a great way to encourage people to, get in there now. And even do a review. I guess if we think we're doing fine with our budget and things are sailing along, we could always get in touch with you and say, hey, can we just do a review of our budget? I think we're doing pretty good, but maybe you can find us some ways to make it even better.
Absolutely. And just kind of looking at things, and then we might see things that, the individual doesn't see to say, okay, you're doing good. Absolutely. Maybe you could be doing even better. What about this? Did you think about that? Or, yeah, you're right, you're doing good, but I see you don't have any investments. You're not planning on the future. Like, have you thought about getting that started? It's like, oh, maybe that's a good idea,
Yeah.
So absolutely. So that's what we're here for, the same way that we offer, various services. We do briefings to talk about our service, but we also offer, various educational presentations. So I have presentation on, budgetings and tips to save. I have presentations on credit, how to use it wisely, how to get out of trouble. We have presentations to talk about, fraud and protection. So again, we have these things available for members, and, without Outcan, again, we would use very similar Zoom type of process or Teams and so on, where gives an opportunity for education. Some of these presentations I've done for many years throughout my career, and from your beginner to the individual that would say, well, I'm a good budgeter and I'm good with finance, they've all learned something in these presentations.
Sure.
Because a lot of the things have changed over time and how we do things, and now we've discovered, better ways to do certain things that make it easier on the individual. Because we all know that when something is hard, we get discouraged. If it demands a lot of time, we don't like doing it. I have often compared budgeting to going to the gym. Now, although this might not be for the right audience, but a lot of people sign up for gym memberships and then they never go, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of what happens with budgets. We create a budget, we put all these numbers down, but then we forget about the tracking. So that's just paying for a membership and not going to the gym. So it's getting that full circle. So if you need to go to the gym, once a week for 6 hours, we don't want to do that. But if you go once a week for like 10-15 minutes and it gives you the same result, oh, that I can do. So again, it's bringing that information and those tips and tricks on making it as easy as possible for the individual, but at the same time, still giving you all that information that you need in the end. And that's where we can help with those kinds of things.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'm looking forward to Military Family Services US, sort of, and the partnership that we have with SISIP. I'm looking at, being able to offer more of those very specific kind of educational tools that you have to our members and our families, whether it's in way of a more focused sort of, PowerPoint type presentation or whatever it is. I'm really looking forward to this partnership. I'm really looking forward to the fact that we're now introducing you and SISIP a little bit more intentionally to our members and families, and letting our members and families OCAN know that, yeah, you're outside of Canada, but SISIP is still there for you. You are still able to access them. So I'm really excited about that. I think our families will be excited. So I would just kind of, I guess, close off by saying that if any of the listeners want to learn more about how SISIP can work for you and your families while you're on OCAN, you can head on over to sisip.com. So Martin, thank you for the work that you're doing to help our service members and families develop healthy financial lives. Thank you for your willingness to have this kind of casual sort of chat with me and to the listeners, to just kind of give us a little bit of an overview of what you can do at SISIP. And thank you to everybody for listening to another episode of MFS US Connects.